Hello, I'm Karen Anitrello, Manager of Advocacy and Support at the National Scleroderma Foundation. Thank you for attending today's session. Everyone can be an advocate, and you may already be one. I would like to introduce our speaker, Phil Goldless. He is our advocacy partner in Washington. He's worked with many patient organizations for many years, focusing on expanding research and educating policymakers on the challenges of the rare disease community. Phil has expertise in the appropriations process and advancing critical priorities of the rare disease community through Congress. He previously worked for two New York House representative members, giving him direct knowledge of the legislative process. Thanks for being here today, Phil.
Thanks, Karen. It's good to be here. So just want to start off by thanking you all for joining this session and learning more about what advocacy is. As Karen mentioned, I work here in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the National Scleroderma Foundation, involved with our advocacy efforts as the eyes and ears for the community on Capitol Hill and across federal agencies. The work that I do, though, cannot be achieved without all of you, and that is the community and advocates who connect with their members of Congress, develop key relationships, and use their voice to educate lawmakers and to really drive home the importance of supporting our key priorities. So first, for many of you who may not have ever participated in advocacy before, the first question may be, what is advocacy? Advocacy is an opportunity for you to use your voice to educate specific lawmakers and decision makers about specific priorities and help to influence them in terms of what votes they take, what priorities they support, and different things that they fight for on your behalf as your elected representative here in Washington. Second question, I guess, from that comes, do I have to be an expert? And the answer is no. What's most important for you as an advocate is just to be able to tell your story, share what your experience has been. I work here in DC on the specific policies. It's my role working with Karen and the foundation to be the one to work on the specific policy efforts, to know all key bill numbers, know all the specifics, and really be in the weeds on everything when it comes to policy, how to advance it, who to talk to, and those key specifics. What's very important for you, though, is to just share your story. There are plenty of resources at the foundation that we have for advocates to be able to learn more about how to craft your story and a little more detail about sort of the legislative process for those of you who are interested. But for those of you who, again, may have never participated in advocacy before, I'm glad that you're here because your voice is what really makes a difference. And I know that it can be very intimidating for folks who haven't advocated before, who are worried about memorizing, specific details or don't know how to engage with their members of Congress. And I just want to put you at ease to say, we are here for that. We help walk you through all of that. Again, we have plenty of resources to help you with that. And what we do at the foundation is we work with a grassroots network of advocates. So we have advocates from all across the country, whether you're from up in Maine, down in Florida, up in Alaska, or all the way out in beautiful sunny Hawaii. So what we do with this network is we work with everybody to, in unison, educate members of Congress. There are different opportunities that we provide for you to participate in, where, again, we craft the message. The only thing that you have to do is just share your story, share the impact of how has scleroderma affected you, whether you're a patient, a caregiver, a loved one. What has your experience been? Members of Congress want to hear from you, their constituents, about what decisions they can make here in Washington, how they benefit their constituents, and how they make their lives better. So there is a lot of good work that we do here in Washington, but I really want to drive home the importance that none of that gets done without you and you sharing your story. I know that in past conference years, we've had this presentation and we've spoken about some of the specifics and how Washington works and things like that. And one thing that always gets said from experienced advocate is, you don't have to memorize any of that. That's what we're here for at the foundation here in Washington. So just want to encourage you to learn more about, the efforts that are going on with us. And, if you're willing to share your story, we're more than capable to help you craft that, give you some tips on what works, and help you really feel most comfortable in being an advocate, in sharing your story. Advocacy is something that is year-round. We do have specific calls to action or action alerts, but that's not something that is a one-off type of thing. Advocacy is year-round, and we've been very fortunate that a lot of our congressional champions have been champions for years because of those relationships that their constituents have with them and the outreach that we have throughout the year. So that's a little bit of the background on sort of advocacy, Karen, but I'm sure that we'll get into some other details here.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil, I was just thinking that when we had meetings with members of the Senate and we did not have an advocate, I almost feel like it wasn't as impactful, right? They didn't have a story to share. It was just us from the foundation. So can you share a little bit about how important it is to have a constituent?
Sure. So without getting too much into the details, Congress is set up where there are 100 senators and 435 members of the House. So 535 offices in total. I could go into each and every one of those offices and say, here are the priorities of the scleroderma community. Please support them. Please fund X amount of money. Please, advance this bill. The one question that everybody has is, how does this affect my district in the House, or how does this affect my state in the Senate? So one thing that every office wants to hear is from their constituents and how it matters locally. So Karen, as you mentioned, we've had meetings in the past where we've met with staffers and, we have good conversations with them, but it's not as meaningful as when you have a constituent who's able to share what their story has been. The foundation, we give all of the information that we can, but that personal side of it, that personal experience really does put things over the top for members of Congress. And having that constituent be part of the discussion or having that relationship really does make a difference. And if you look back to historically all of our legislative and policy successes, they can all be tied to advocates who have developed key relationships with their members and, with us and putting the policy side together, them being a part of it and sharing their story and sharing their experience really does go a long way to advancing our priorities.
Absolutely. So if a constituent or an advocate connects with somebody in Congress, what's the best way or ways to follow up with them to keep that connection going?
Sure. So what I will always say is keep the foundation informed of any outreach that you have with members of Congress, any conversations you have, whether it's at a local fair or something happening in your community, or if it's in a meeting in their district office or here in Washington. We again help you with all of the follow-up items, what specific information you should include with that message, whether they're handouts or anything like that. So we help with that perspective. But advocates who have been active for many years will tell you once you develop that relationship, you'll see how easy it is to send an email to a staffer and just remind them of something that's important, or touch base with them periodically throughout the year on any number of issues. And you'll see that staffers do remember you, do remember what the issues are, and sometimes will even go out of their way to contact you to ask your opinion on something that has come across their desk. So follow-up is very important. Advocacy, again, is not just one day out of the year. It's not something that's a one-off thing. It really is a year-long or year-round activity, and very multi-year as well, because those relationships are developed and we're able to continue to update folks about what's going on. When we are in person, we're able to have them join us for different things. We have Capitol Hill Day here in Washington where folks come and we're able to move around the Capitol and have these discussions. So having that relationship and that communication is very important. But again, we help you with all of that. I cannot stress that enough, that the only thing that we ask of you with advocacy is to be that expert in what you know best, and that's what your experience has been. All of the other things, we're here to help.
Yes, absolutely. So for example, what if I was in a meeting with a member of Congress and they asked me specifically what the bill was, and I only was prepared for my story?
So it's perfectly,
Yeah.
it's perfectly okay. And there was a story from years ago that a constituent went into an office and did not remember what the bill number was and wasn't able to remember all of that, and that's perfectly okay. What's important is getting that contact information from the staffer or the member, and to share that with us so that way I can follow up with them. And it's never a bad thing if you're in a meeting to say, I'm not sure about the answer to that question, but let me find it out and I'll, follow back up with you for that. It not only gives you an opportunity to have that follow up, but it allows you to get that information and to continue that relationship where they're interested in learning more. You're able to get the right information for them and follow up with them. And again, we help with all that, but never feel that you have to be on the spot and remember all of these things. It's perfectly okay to say, I'm not sure, but I will get the information, follow up with you, and really focus on sharing that critical part of your story.
Thank you. What is, in your experience, Phil, what has some advocates been like maybe apprehensive about? It feels like an advocate feels like it's a heavy lift.
And I'm very aware of how sometimes folks may feel that advocacy is sort of like drinking out of a fire hose. There's a lot of information that comes at you at once, and you're trying to memorize whether they're acronyms for federal agencies, specific funding recommendations, bill numbers, policy items, things like that. I just want to put everybody at ease. That's stuff you don't have to worry about at all. There are tools that we put together, whether they're email scripts or leave behind materials, options for you to use to share the information with officers. What's important for you, and I know I've said this a lot, but it can't stress it enough, is just being that expert in what your experience has been and whatever role it may be. I know advocates that are patients themselves, are loved ones, are caregivers, and we know that there are no two patient stories that are exactly the same. So it's important to share what your experience has been, what your highs have been, what your lows have been, and what you're comfortable sharing. I want to reiterate that too. You don't have to give information that you're not comfortable with. It's all about what you feel comfortable with and what you want to share to get your message across to them. And again, that's how we're helpful for you as well, to just help fine tune what that story is. We always tell folks about 3 to 4 minutes, practice it and really get that sort of elevator pitch down. So that way, if you find yourself, in the grocery store and you see your member of Congress, you can say hello and give them a quick, Scleroderma 101 piece of information. Folks in my experience who have wanted to be involved in advocacy, the first question I always get is, I'm not a policy person. How can I do this? Is this just for people who are, well into the mix of, politics or the legislative process, or, spend a lot of time on that? And the answer is no. Our advocates are folks who may respond to an action alert, who, connect with their local official. It ranges from that they connect and share the information when we ask them to folks who may speak with their members' offices every week. So there's no one clear definition of what an advocate should be. We accept everybody and how much they want to be involved and really work with you to find, what your comfort level is in terms of connecting with offices and sharing your story. So what I continuously will stress is we are here to help, and any questions that you have, feel free to reach out to us, ask us for more information. We're here to walk you through everything, to help you understand. There are some folks who want to know a lot more about the process and those specific things. That's great. We can do that with you. Other folks just want to be able to simply share their story, and we work with you on that too. So we're here as a great resource, and it's part of what we do. And as I've mentioned before, it really helps me most here in Washington to be able to go into an office and say, Senator X, I know that these 10 constituents have reached out to you. I know that, Billy Bob has sent you a note about this, and just want to follow up on that and really drive home the importance locally to these folks.
Most definitely. Phil, can you give some examples of what we've been doing throughout this year?
Sure. So what we have currently going on is an action alert that is specifically about one of our priorities that's working through the appropriations process. So what we're asking folks to do is simply to just sign their name to a petition that has all of the information already laid out. And all we're asking you to do is put your key information in there. That information on the sheet gets sent to us, and we supply that to your senator's offices. For those of you who are worried about privacy concerns, we don't do anything with your address or anything like that. but it's important that Senate offices do see that address because they do check to see that you live in their state, and then it gives them an opportunity to record that you reached out to them, and then they will send you a response back to your interaction with them. So there's a lot of activity that we do on an annual basis. Just last month, it was Scleroderma Awareness Month, and through one of our longtime advocates, there was a member of the House of Representatives who formally recognized June as Scleroderma Awareness Month in the House of Representatives. So that's a direct result of advocacy and relationship building and the connection that has been made for a member of Congress to do that on our community's behalf, but specifically on his constituents' behalf. The action alert is something that we encourage everybody today as part of conference to participate in. It's a very opportune time where the Senate is still working through some appropriations work and what our request is. And I know I'm being very vague because I don't want to scare folks away, and there's going to be more information about what the action alert is specifically about. But I encourage you just to take a look at it, and if you have any questions, to ask those. But it's a good first step into advocacy to put your name and lend your support to something that's critically important for our community, and will be delivered to your senators, and is a good way to ease into being an advocate. And then we'll follow up with you and answer any questions that you have. But there's a lot of good work that we continue to do. Scleroderma, the community has been incredibly successful for the many years that I've been working with you all to elevate priorities of the Scleroderma community within Congress, whether they be in appropriation bills or recognition of Awareness Month or different policies that are put forward. So we continue to be successful, and that is because of all of you who participate in advocacy and who lend your voice to educate folks about what the critical needs are for the community.
Excellent. Any last thoughts or words of encouragement for potential advocates?
The biggest thing I could just say is thank you. I know it may not be easy for folks to share their story, to dive into what their experience has been. I know that it's not something that may always come natural to folks or may be easy. There may be a lot of emotions associated with it. So I just want to say thank you to all of those who are able to advocate and to participate. And if you are someone who, may not fully want to jump in with both feet to say, I want to give my whole story and all of this to my members of Congress, there are different ways that we can work together on helping you elevate your voice in the capacity in which you're comfortable with. So, again, what I do here in DC would not be successful without all of you. You really are making a difference. And I know that some folks may say, well, I just signed one piece of paper. How is that
Right.
really move the needle? And it does. I cannot stress to you enough how important that is. Again, when I go into these offices, I know many of these folks, I have good working relationships with them. They would do something if I asked them to, but what really drives it home is for me to be able to say, here's a pile of 10 letters from folks who care about this specific issue and want you to act on it. So all of it makes a difference. The smallest thing of just putting your name onto a petition letter, that is incredibly effective. Sending an email to your member of Congress, that is incredibly effective. Any opportunity that you have that you use to elevate and to educate really does help move the needle forward. So I just want to encourage everybody as much as you can to become involved in advocacy. We're here to help. We're here to walk you through everything. Don't be afraid. I know that that's interesting coming from somebody who lives this on a daily basis, but don't be afraid. There are plenty of tools to help you, and you'll get to join a community of other advocates who can share their perspective with you about what it has been when they first became an advocate, and some encounters that they had in terms of being nervous and how they overcame that. But we definitely are here to help, and it's a good partnership that we have historically had and look forward to continuing to have. So thank you all for your willingness.
Thank you so much, Phil. Let's see. I just wanted to share. So for further information, you can contact Phil right here. There's his email and phone number. And then if you have any questions about information about resources available from the National Scleroderma Foundation, absolutely connect with me. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. And thank you again, Phil.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.